Hi, I'm Jim Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. The Division P of the TCEC 18 Championship has started, and four engines are the favourites. They're Leela, Stockfish, Stowflace, and Ali Stein. And amongst those, Stowflace has taken an early lead with some aggressive chess. Today, we'll be looking at a Leela game, Leela against Komodo in the King's Indian. And it's a really nice game. We start with quite a blocked pawn structure, and Komodo then plays some early pawn breaks, which maybe helps white. Leela manoeuvres the bishops to d1 and d2, where they're very well placed, attacking and defending on both halves of the board. And watch out a bit later for some really nice king play by Leela in order to defend against Komodo's attack.
Yeah, it's a really good game actually. Another Leela King's Indian classic. So let's have a look at how that went. I'll just move the back to the original position, and we're going to see how that actually went. So that was d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. A slightly unusual move order was used. Bishop e2, bishop e3, which was actually a system that I used to play as a youngster, 14, 15. I scored a lot of very good victories with this. But after e5, d5, knight bd7, knight f3, we're back into either a normal bishop e3, King's Indian, or a Petrosian system. It can arise from both. And this is after knight g4, this is where the TCEC book ended. What's the point of knight g4? Well, in this position, white's threatening to play the move knight d2, which really gets white an ideal anti-King's Indian structure. The bishop is on e3, supports c4 to c5, a general queenside pawn advance. And once the knight has moved from d2, then the black knight can't move to either g4 or h5. So in order for black to get its desired f7 to f5 break, the knight has to go back to e8, which is more passive than h5. So this is, white's positional threat is to play knight d2 here. So black plays this move knight g4 just to disrupt the structure. Now they play around a little bit. Leela goes back to c1, the knight goes back to f6, the bishop goes back to e3, the knight comes to g4.
Will it be a draw?
No, never a draw. Never a draw in computer chess. So bishop g5.
Interestingly, this division started off with, I think, 5 at least decisive games in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is quite unusual at this top level.
Yeah, no, it was very scary. We're really wondering what's going to happen. Is there going to be some huge gap between the top and the bottom engines? But yeah, there's been a few more draws now, but still quite a few decisive games. So after bishop g5, f6, white plays bishop h4. And this is always a double-edged decision for white. The bishop on h4 pins the pawn on f6 to the queen on d8. So that means that black's counterplay with f6 to f5 is slowed. On the other hand, that bishop on h4, well, it's actually been drawn away from the queen side. So white's queenside play with c5 is going to be slower. You know, it's going to take white's going to have to waste some time getting that bishop back into play. On the other hand, the knight has come out to g4. That one will also have to go back to h6 and f7. So it swings and roundabouts, you know, all over the place. A typical complex King's Indian position. So black played a5, knight d2, knight h6. The knight moves away. f3 from white, looking to get the bishop back into play. When that bishop comes back to f2, then it's going to be supporting c4 to c5 again. But of course, with all the time that white's wasted, you could say, on this bishop g5, h4 maneuver, black's managed to get a reasonably strong blockade on the queen side and plays this move knight c5. And after knight b3, plays this move b6, supporting the knight on c5. And now a very, very important moment here, and a very interesting moment. We'll spend a little bit of time on it, because Leela played this move knight takes c5, very consistent, obviously, after knight b3. and then Komodo answered b takes c5.
So I guess Leela's exchanged off black's most active piece.
That is true. That is definitely true. It's, I mean, this is quite a common pawn structure. Actually, I was looking, for examples of it, and I think the first example I found was the game Teichmann against Schlechter from Monte Carlo, 1902 or 1905. So, this sort of structure with double pawns on the C file and an open B file, and a blocked centre as well, is quite well known. What are the advantages and the disadvantages for black? Well, the advantage for black is that any white play with a3 and b4 is going to be very difficult to achieve because you've got this barrier of pawns on a5 and c5. The one big problem for black is that black doesn't really have any queenside breaks anymore, so queenside counterplay is going to be quite difficult, particularly when you consider that white can play a2 to a4 and eventually knight to b5. And, there's no way you're getting past that barrier, which means that white's got an almost invulnerable position for its king on the queen side. So, from that point of view, that's quite nice. The whole the board becomes a little bit narrower somehow. The queen side is pretty much closed. And then, in order to see who might be better, you have a look at the king side situation. Now, I found a lot of games in this structure where black had already played f4 and g5 and had already gained quite a bit of space on the king side, and in those cases black's actually doing quite well. But in this case, in this specific position, black's pawns are not advancing yet. This bishop on h4 is still very useful, stopping the pawn on f6 for advancing, which means that white's going to be able to get in this move g4, clamp down on the black king side a bit. And basically, it looks like if anyone's going to be gaining big space on the king side in this position, it's going to be white rather than black. And what that...
I suppose if black plays kind of g5, forces the bishop back, and then f5, that's pretty loose for black in front of its own king.
Yeah, and also weakening a lot of light squares as well after e takes f5. It's one of those double-edged things as well. I mean, the knight could come into d4, but in general, the light squares are more important. The other important thing for white, of course, is that the king has not castled king side, so this king can go over to the queen side still. So, in general, I think after b takes c5, I think white's actually got quite a substantial advantage. The thing that always put me off, playing this plan, I've played a lot of King's Indians in my time, and studied quite a few of them, is that after knight takes c5, I was a little bit more concerned about d takes c5 from black. So, similar things apply on the king side. On the queen side, it is a bit more possible for white to play a3 and b4, but still not that easy. The one thing I like about this d takes c5 is that black gets the d6 square for the knight, and I think this makes black's position a lot freer and a lot easier to get some sort of counterplay. This was a game that I played between my engines. This was Stockfish with white against Stockfish as black. And, black actually played this very nicely, I thought. Bishop comes into e3, knight comes into d6, bishop comes back into d4, and then black manages somehow to close the position up with f4, and then played queen e7, king h8, rook g8, and things get swapped off along the g file, and there's not really that much for white to do. Now, I think that this is really a better plan for black. After b takes c5, then I think black's got some real problems actually finding anything to do in this position. So queen c2 was played, bishop d7, a4. So black was threatening to play a4 just to get a little bit of extra foothold on the queen side. So white plays this excellent move a4, and now the knight is going to be completely invulnerable on b5 when it goes there. Knight f7, actually a bit of a positional threat here. Black threatening to play bishop h6 to stop white from castling queenside, but white castles queenside now and gets the king safe.
White's getting in these moves just in time.
Just in time, that's right. Now black takes the opportunity to activate the dark squared bishop. Rather than staying passive on g7, it gets active on e3, and we saw that in the engine games that we looked at. Yeah, I mean the drawback to this is that this bishop is going to get exchanged at some stage, and probably for the knight, and that's going to mean that the kingside dark squares are going to be a little bit loose. So black's got to be very careful with the type of pawn structure that it sets up on the kingside, because if it doesn't cover its kingside dark squares, then it's really going to miss this its dark squared bishop. So Leela plays some consolidating moves here. King a2, knight h6, bishop d3, king g7, b3, just getting the queenside sorted. And now this move c6 from Komodo, and yeah, I mean I thoroughly understand the reasons for it. And my engines, the engine in the engine games that I played, they play c6 reasonably quickly as well. The one thing that really worries me about this position is that White's big goal here is the position's very blocked, and White's got to try and force something open. And well, it looks like it's got to be on the queen side on the king side rather in this position. And you look at it, and it's not quite easy to visualize how that's actually going to happen, how you're going to force that. When black plays this move c6, this does give white an extra possibility of opening the position. For example, d takes c6, bishop takes c6, knight d5. Is possible. And if black then takes the bishop on d5, the knight on d5, and I play e takes d5, and the line of this bishop and queen has been opened. It just gives white an extra way of opening up the position and putting pressure on black's position. And yeah, I would have waited a long time before playing that one, I have to say. But Komodo's got a specific plan behind it. It plays the knight back to e7, which is aiming for after d takes c6, you could play knight takes c6 and bring the knight into b4 or d4. So there's a definite plan behind it. It's just that in the long term, I think that that white's going to have more advantage from it than black. Now, a very important move was played there, which I just skipped by quickly, and that was this move bishop e1. Bishop e1 is the first step of a set of really great bishop regroupings by Leela, as Natasha mentioned. So this bishop, first of all, well, from e1, what's it doing? Well, it covers c3, it covers b4, any potential invasions, and it also attacks the a5 pawn, which is going to be, well, a very important theme throughout the whole game, actually. So h4, h6, rook b1, Leela just consolidating the b3 square. That's the weakest square on white's queen side at the moment. Queen b6, queen g2, queen a6, queen e2, attacking the bishop, and bishop d2. And now you see why this is such a beautiful square for the bishop. It's not only doing all the stuff that I've described, it's also attacking the king side, attacking the h6 pawn, supporting the g4 to g5 break, and supporting the f3 to f4 break. So black here played rook h8, well, we're going to get to an important moment. I think I'll show this first of all. Rook h8, rook h3 from Leela, and now this move h5. Now, really, I think that this is not a good move. I mean, in general, they have the rule that you shouldn't move a pawn on the side where the opponent is attacking. It's a good general rule of thumb, but I mean, it's not always easy to hold. The reason I don't like this move h6 to h5 is that black really has got no chance anymore of setting any sort of barrier up on the king side. After this move, white is always going to be able to open the king side, whether it's through a later g takes h5 or g5 and then f4, then f4. Black can't stop white from coming through actually on dark squares. And when you think what I said before, that that black's got to be careful because he's moved his bishop away from the king side, and that the king side dark squares could be weak. I think it's not a good idea to be weakening your king side dark squares more by playing a move like h6 to h5.
Maybe black was trying to stop white playing h5. Next move.
Oh, good lord, no! Because after h5, you'd played g5. and
that just closes it
and
all
the
up.
king side's
So
completely closed up. I mean, if I'm looking at what I would have been looking to play in this position, I mean, something like G5 was the idea that I was looking at, just intuitively, just from the start. The idea just to play knight G6 and really just try and block up that king side. Now you've got to be very careful about it because, for example, if I play a move like HG, then I think here that actually F4 was very strong. If I go E takes F4, then I can play E5 and break through like this. H7 is weak. If I go G takes F4, then I was coming D takes C6, knight D5, and then I'm coming in with G5 afterwards. Very, very.
side's really opening up.
Yeah, very, very dangerous for black here. But I think that you could do this in a slightly cleverer way. You could go Rook H8 first, Rook H3, and then go this move G5. And the interesting thing about it is that I think White plays something like Rook H1, Knight G6, and then White can actually play a position like this, swap off both rooks, and then afterwards you take on C6. And you play this move Knight B5, and the point is this pawn on A5 is lost because I can always play Queen E1 and Bishop takes A5 to attack it.
Yeah.
However,
B6 pawn is looking a bit weak too.
yeah. However, I mean these were the types of positions with just giving up the pawn on A5 that Stockfish was managing to hold, from time to time in the engine games, simply because it's a very narrow path of entry. The king side, you're not coming through that anymore. And well, just with the A pawn gone, it's very hard to push that A pawn through. It's kind of defensible. I mean, it's a very long grovel, but it's possible. And that's, I think it makes much more sense to put your pawns on dark squares on the king side when your bishop's moved away, than play this move H5. Now, of course, there's a number of points to this. I mean, but Leela just again just in time anticipates everything and finds a great manoeuvring to hold its position. So Rook H1, Rook H7, Rook back to H2, getting out of that pin on the pawn on G4, and Rook H8. And actually, you might notice that Black's got a rather unpleasant threat here, and that's to play Queen C8, attacking the pawn on G4. And how does White cover this pawn on G4? Because if you play Rook G2, then Black will take on G4 and then take the pawn on H4. So there's a lot of pressure all of a sudden on these pawns on G4 and H4. But Leela, has just seen this fantastic regrouping maneuver. It plays this move Bishop C2, and King F7 doesn't matter what Black plays here because Leela's playing Bishop D1, and this is a really, really wonderful maneuver. So the bishop on D1 is covering the pawn on B3, so great defensive play. It's also helping the queen defend the pawn on G4, so Black can no longer put any pressure on it with Queen A6 and Bishop D7. And, of course, this bishop is X-ray attacking the pawn on H5. So when you take on H5 and you play a break with F4, you'll be attacking a rook on H5. So it's doing all the stuff that you need it to do. These two bishops on D1 and D2, they're covering the queen side perfectly and also providing great attacking potential on the king side. So again, Leela's just put its pieces in great spots there. And now it's a question of teeing up the break at the right moment. And well, Leela goes for something else. This is the AlphaZero spot for the king. That was actually, I think it's, you were the one who noticed that when we were playing through the games that
I mentioned that.
The king's it was often finding a space on A3 or H6. There's this great game, the Rook's Pawn Symphony, where AlphaZero puts its king on H6, and actually Peter Heide-Nielsen said that it reminded him very much of shogi, because you do often do this as well, where you push a Rook's Pawn and get your king out safe on the side, So we're seeing it in chess as well. It's quite amazing.
Yes, and Peter Heine mentioned he was tweeting it in chess context, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right as well. I mean, he noticed that Leela did this a lot, and he even called it the Leela Castle as well. So very, very interesting. So King G7, Queen G2. Leela's just going to play around a little bit more, moves its king back, just get out of the way of Queen B4. King F7, Queen F1. It's just optimizing its pieces, just finding the best spots for them before it takes action. And that action is to play the move knight e2. And, well, this actually fits in with what we said earlier. We said that black had to be very careful with moving its bishop to d4. That bishop can get exchanged, and then its kingside dark squares will be missing protection. And, well, together with this move h5, well, when white takes on d4, you've got f4 break, g5 break, the king's on f7, in the line of the queen as well. This is, the perfect moment to take action, and Leela spots this very well. So c takes d5, knight takes d4, c takes d4, and c takes d5. Indeed, indeed. Rook b8, black's threatening bishop takes a4, and now this great defensive move. I mean, queen c4 was possible as well, but king a3 is wonderful. So the idea is simply, if bishop takes a4, white just takes back with a king, and white's got no more, well, black's got nothing more that he can do. And see how wonderful these bishops on d1 and d2 are, just protecting everything.
Because it looks like there's no pieces near that white king at all, no white pieces near that white king.
Exactly, but these bishops are doing great, and yeah, and this bishop on d1, I mean, we're also threatening g takes h5 and then f4, so I mean, it's really... There's stuff happening on both sides of the board, and white's also threatening to go rook g1 now that the bishop on d4 is no longer covering g1. So Komodo decided to go all in, a little bit desperate, went knight takes d5. E takes d5 is possible, but Leela refined it slightly, played queen c4, takes, and queen d3. Komodo kept on attacking, kept on trying to disrupt the white structure with e4. And now queen d4, e takes f3, rook f2. So there seem to be a few threats against the Leela king, but in actual fact, the weakness of the dark squares on the black king are much more important. So, for example, bishop takes b3 is one idea, but then Leela just intended to play bishop c3, attacking the pawn on f6. And if bishop d1, we go rook b2, just to cover the weakness on b3, and then queen takes f6 is going to be a huge, huge threat on the next move. That's going to be it. Queen takes b3 check is possible. It's going to be very similar to the game, actually. We take, king a2, rook d3 check, takes, and g5. And we've got this type of position where we've got a bishop for a few pawns, but these pawns are very weak, and, well, Leela will be able to round them up. We'll see how that happened in the game. So Komodo tried to refine that idea a little bit and played bishop e6. So, well, if I play rook f3, then queen f3, bishop f3, rook b3 check, and rook d3 will be very, very unpleasant. But Leela here plays a great move. The king's done its duty on a3, defending on a4. So Leela just brings it back, plays king b2, and after bishop takes b3, plays the king back to a1, just heading back there. And amazingly, those bishops and that beautiful centralized queen are doing an amazing job. So if bishop d1, we just go rook takes d1, and again, we're threatening bishop c3. That's going to be the next huge move coming in. So Komodo played bishop e6, and then bishop c2. And once again, bishop's covering b1 and b3. The queen's covering d4. The bishop's covering b4. And bishop c3 is the threat when we'll combine again defense and attack with those bishops. So, well, white's piece up. Komodo decided to go for the attritional defense technique. Essentially just swapping off queens and hoping to survive in this ending. I mean, black does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns, so 3 pawns for the piece. The problem is that the pawns are all pretty weak. Leela's going to be able to gang up and target them. The other thing is that the light square bishops might get exchanged, but the dark square bishops are going to stay on, and white's got the right coloured rook's pawn for that bishop. So that basically means that white will be able to offer the exchange of rooks all the time, which is one of the key ways of making progress. So let's have a look how Leela did it. I thought it might still be quite tricky. I mean, I wouldn't fancy trying to win this with in a blitz finish with 45 seconds or a minute on my clock, but Leela finished it off very, very easily, in actual fact. Rook d1. Bishop b3. Komodo exchanges off the bishops there. King a2.
She's done a very good job, though, hasn't it?
Done a wonderful job. Rook f1. Just getting rid of the first pawn to get rid of is the advanced one. Rook a4, rook a3. Komodo doesn't want to exchange off rooks just like that, so has to lose the a pawn. The white king's still a little bit, well, say, cornered on the a file there, but white is able to offer the exchange of rooks all the time. So that just means that it's just a question of time, you know, the king getting active. So first of all, an exchange offered on the b file, then we're going to offer an exchange of rooks on the c file. So there's no way that you can stop the king coming across. So that's the first stage. The question is now, are we going to gang up on the d6 pawn? Well, we certainly are. Bishop f4 was threatened, so black offers the exchange of rooks there. And now it's just a question of actually getting the rook to the f6 square. Leela never sort of rushes in these types of positions, just always takes its time, checks the king back, the king moves in a bit. Well, rook takes d5, rook f4 check, but we just move back like this. And now we're going to play bishop g5 and rook f1 and rook f6. That's just the basic idea. And there's not very much you can do about it. Rook a6 now. This g6 pawn is going. King f5 allows rook f6 check. So
remember that the rook's pawn is the right colour for that bishop.
Exactly. So white
trying to swap the rooks.
Exactly. I mean that's the key point really. And rook takes g6 happened, and Komodo resigned in a few more moves. The h5 pawn is going as well. So that was that game. I mean, I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, just to go through a few of the key moments from it. I think, you know, this moment of taking on c5 is a very key moment. It's a very interesting plan from Leela, but I do think that d takes c5 gives black still some chances for some play. Whereas I think after b takes c5, I think black's really in very big danger of becoming completely passive. And well, I thought Leela manoeuvred beautifully. In particular, the bishop play, you know, moving the bishop to e1 and then d2 and then d1 afterwards was really great. But I think that, you know, a crucial moment here was when Komodo played h5. I think after h5, in principle, I don't think the position can be held anymore. I think white's always breaking through. Whereas, you know, with a move like g5, at least in my engine games, you know, Stockfish was managing to hold this from, you know, from time to time just by attritional defence and just giving up the a pawn and just asking white to prove that he can still break through. And then, yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I mean this manoeuvre, the bishop coming back to d1 was lovely, and then yeah, the final push was very beautifully done by Leela. Of course, the whole thing with the king coming to a3 and then the king dodging back to a1, you know, just changing the position of the king just changes the you know, the whole nature of the position. It's really quite amazing. And also a very nice theme that the dark squares were, we warned that the dark squares might get weak when black activated its dark square bishop, and then they end up being the crucial factor here as well. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. Lots more games to be played in the Season 18 Division P. And of course, lots more great games that we'll take a look at. There's certainly been a few more that we might take a look at already. So yeah, thanks for watching, and keep on watching this channel.
Thank you for watching.